Yes, a statement of intent for CCHL. So you've got a presentation that you wanted to start with?
Yeah,
Is
thanks,
that right?
Melanie.
I'll let you get on with that and then we'll move on to questions and other points later. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So the purpose of today's session is for us to present the draft SOIs to Council for CCHL and our subsidiaries, noting that we've previously had a workshop with you on these. We have prepared a presentation for your benefit, which Paul and Tony can talk to, but I want to start with some high-level observations. As previously discussed, our subsidiaries are not immune to the challenging economic environment, and we're working really closely with them to understand the impact of that on their financial performance. In particular, we are ensuring that they do what they can in addressing costs before impacting dividends, even as they maintain their commitment to paying the living wage. Despite these challenges, we're pleased to say that we've retained our intention to pay you a $50 million dividend in FY24 as projected in last year's SOI. That reflects the commitment of all of the subsidiaries to play their part in delivering on that. At the same time, our subsidiaries are all also thinking about investing in future growth, acknowledging that this is a more constrained capital environment than at any other point in the last 10 years. That means they face strategic choices at an entity level, and we face strategic choices in terms of how we support that or not at a shareholder level. And these themes are reflected in our SOI. As examples of that, for Orion, the challenge is how they invest in building the network capacity required to accommodate the surge in electricity demand and changing consumer preferences, anticipated over the next 10 years while maintaining a sustainable level of dividends. For LPC, while they continue to work on providing a fair return to their shareholder and making the improvements that we all expect in health and safety and workplace culture, they are also thinking about the investment that's required to keep shifting the port east, opening up the central harbour to community use and access as they do. For Enable, the challenge is managing the transition from being the developer of a high-quality network to being the operator of that network, while addressing the competition that's coming from ISPs and Starlink. For CityCare, there is an opportunity to build a business of scale arising from the growing demand for high-quality maintenance services in the social infrastructure and water services sector. And for EcoCentral, they're focused on playing a leading role in the evolution of the circular economy, not just in Christchurch, but across the South Island. And finally, for Christchurch International Airport, they are focused on executing an effective reset of their core business as the operator of New Zealand's second largest airport in Christchurch, while thinking about the future growth opportunities, particularly those attached to Christchurch as a destination city. Those opportunities include consideration of developing a new airport in central Otago, and I want to make a few additional comments on our approach to providing oversight of that project and process. I want to stress that CCHL acknowledges that there is and will continue to be considerable interest in this project from both you as our shareholder and across a wide range of stakeholders. With this in mind, we also expect CIAL to engage proactively with interested parties, both during the informal engagement processes that they currently have underway and during any formal consultation processes that may follow. Likewise, we don't shy away from the fact that at CCHL, we have made a commitment to stronger engagement and increased transparency, something that we hope you've seen evidence of in recent months, and that extends to this and other new projects any of our subs might be considering. It's also important that everybody understands the unique nature of the approach that CIAL is taking to this project. There is no predetermined outcome which the airport is trying to hide. Instead, what they have brought is an option, which requires a number of phases of work to be undertaken before any decision is ever made in respect of whether or not to exercise that option. These phases include the information discovery phase, which they are still in. This will include further periods of engagement over the course of this year. We think it is reasonable to expect that this will include a clearer picture of the problem that Central Otago faces in accommodating growth and why an airport in Central Otago may form a part of that solution, and I stress may. Then there is a gateway decision point where the evidence gathered during the information discovery phase will be presented to the Christchurch International Airport Board and shared with CCHL and Council before a decision is made to advance to the next stage. That next stage is resource consent, which is likely to involve a significant timeline that will also involve significant formal public consultation. Following that, if we get to that point, there will be a detailed business case. Like any project, it's one thing to get a consent and it's quite another to make a decision to proceed. That will involve a detailed business case, which itself will take considerable time and effort to develop. It's also a business case that will need to demonstrate that any potential investment doesn't just deliver strong commercial returns, but also meets the requirements we have in terms of economic, social, and environmental sustainability. That is likely to include compelling evidence that there is a pathway to a low-carbon aviation sector, and those sustainable investment objectives will largely mirror your strategic objectives and requirements as the ultimate shareholder. So on this, you've shared with us a number of recent questions that have been posed by some of the interested parties. And we acknowledge that these are relevant questions to ask. But I also want to assure you that they are a subset of a much larger set of questions that we expect to ask of CIAL at the right time. Right now, and for a lot of those questions, there is no answer. That doesn't mean that any of us are hiding anything. It just means that there is other mahi to do first. I also want to stress that CIAL, as the operator of a world-class airport with significant property assets, has our confidence as our subject matter experts. This doesn't mean that theirs is the only opinion that we or you will give weight to in the future, but it is important that we give them room to do their work. With that in mind, I want to extend an offer to you that we bring them in front of you to provide you with more detail on that process I have just talked about. You should have the same level of assurance and confidence that we have, reflecting our joint expectations on how we expect them to engage over the coming months. So with that, I'm happy to hand over to Paul and Tony to take you through our presentation, or we're happy to go to any questions that you have.
Does anyone want to see the presentation, or because that's very much like what you've had in the briefing, or do we just go to questions?
I think we should have the presentation for the public.
Yep.
Hey, here everyone. So just by way of introduction and background, the draft SOIs are prepared in accordance with the LGA, noting that LPC and Orion are governed by other acts. Council did not issue CCHL with an LOE for FY24, but instead indicated that they wanted CCHL to focus on the recommendations of the strategic review, which commenced with the adoption of a new governance structure and appointment of a new board, guided by the enduring statement of expectations. In previous years, we've included quite a long list of targets. This year, we've focused on areas where we can really move the dial. This presentation follows a more detailed presentation, which was presented to Council at a workshop on the 9th of May.
So in terms of our key focus areas, again, we discussed this with you last time. We brought 4 key areas of focus. that, you know, those areas of focus came out of the Northington review and the requirement on us to undertake a strategic review. So the first thing is that we are conscious of council requirements in terms of stronger engagement, increased transparency and improved communication. We're also reflecting in the SOIs the need for stronger governance oversight. The next area of focus has been to recognise the challenging economic environment that we're operating in, and you'll recall the conversation that we had in terms of some of the financial challenges there. That's impacting on operating performance, and as I've talked about already, the need for capital to support growth in the subsidiaries and also the dividend policies. In terms of strategic, the next area of focus is the strategic priorities, and of course that was informed by the Statement of Enduring Expectation, and then finally the strategic review, which is covered in the next slide.
Sure. So in respect of the strategic review, you'll remember, of course, that the council resolved a bunch of things that came out of the Northington report recommendations. For us, primarily, the things that have influenced our SOI is one, that council will develop a clear value strategy in terms of building and utilising income from CCHL, and that value strategy will be informed by your long-term requirements. So we are working closely with council management. We've engaged with you as a council group on what that looks like for us, but getting clarity on what you need from an income point of view, what you might expect from a capital growth point of view, and what you also want to see from an impact across non-financial capitals is going to be important guidance for us this year. In response to that, but also in parallel, we're working on a detailed business case which considers the costs and benefits of transitioning the operating model of CCHL from what has been a passive holding company in the past to an entity that is more active in managing the portfolio. That transition is already underway. CCHL is not a static organisation, and our subsidiaries are not passive entities. They are actively managing their balance sheets every day. So it's important as we start this piece of work that we actually get the problem definition and the opportunity statement right, so that the work we do in coming months responds to those inputs. And these pieces of work obviously need to be developed in time to help inform the public consultation that is part of the long-term plan process. So we have a drop dead date, if you like, by the end of October to make sure that we've completed our work in order that it can have a meaningful impact and you can consult in the manner that you want to. That will be done via a process that sees us coming back to you for further workshops. So again, this is not something that we can do on our own. We don't intend to bring another report to you at the end of 6 months. We intend to engage with you right through the course of this process. As I said, we're not static. We were asked to address a few things, as you're well aware. The first of those major tasks, which was a reset of the CCHL board structure, is now complete. We had our 2-day induction program earlier this week, and that had a high level of engagement from the entire board, but most particularly the new directors. So I thank you for the role that you played in that process. As Abby has said, we have a commitment to stronger engagement and improved transparency. There have been a number of initiatives that have been started, including the roadshow that we did with you all. We've had the first of the semi-annual presentations from all of the subsidiaries, and we will continue to work on that program. As I've said, we're under point 2 above. We've got a requirement to develop a detailed business case. We're a small team, a very lean organisation, and we need an engine to help do that work, and we have appointed a consortium to assist us in the business case and investment advisory services. And that consortium is KPMG Mafic. So KPMG obviously is one of the major financial advisory firms in New Zealand who have significant experience in developing detailed business cases specifically to the infrastructure sector. and Maffic, again, who have significant experience in the infrastructure advisory space as well. What you'll see that we haven't appointed is an investment bank. We are doing a piece of work which helps consider what the costs and benefits of a potential transition in this model looks like. It will be informed by your long-term requirements. There is no predetermined outcome that we are working to. We've just started to develop the consortium work program, and we'll be sharing that with you in a separate briefing.
Okay, in terms of the SOI forecasts, the tables to the right show the draft financial forecast compared with the prior SOI. Notably, the group profits are lower in FY24 and 25 than in the previous SOI, and also parent profits are down by a larger extent, reflecting lower dividends from subsidiaries. There's some key factors impacting the SOI forecasts: the challenging operating environment for all, particularly high inflation, high interest rates, and resource constraints. Orion's revenue is constrained by the default price path, which will be reset for 5 years from FY26. Orion needs to heavily invest in its network to meet future electricity demands, and the airport's post-pandemic recovery is well underway with a view to returning to the old normal by FY25. The port's showing noticeable improvement in performance through resetting pricing strategies and increasing container volumes, while creating new sources of value through its eastern development. And Enable is forecasting to hit peak connections during the SOI period and are facing higher churn due to competitive pressures, while investing to replace key operating platforms and software. And CityCare acquired social housing maintenance provider Spencer Henshaw in September of last year, and are expecting to see profits lift from 5.6 million pre-pandemic to 13.8 million in FY26. Although parent profits are materially lower than in the previous SOI, CCHL has kept its dividend projections to council unchanged throughout this period. For risks and opportunities, the key risks facing the group include the challenging operating environment with economic headwinds and labour constraints, as mentioned previously, along with regulatory environments such as Orion's default price path. Cyber is a key concern for critical infrastructure businesses, along with physical and transition risks as we shift towards a low carbon and more climate-friendly future. Opportunities include strategic choices such as subsidiary investment requirements to future-proof the electricity network and to support Enable's transition from a developer to an operator. LPC will continue with its eastern development while the airport focuses on delivering above-trend passenger growth, such as through the Central Otago opportunity, partnering with airlines and partnering with CNZ on Destination Christchurch. The impact framework gives focus to decarbonisation, with the group currently working on its emission reduction plans, a continuation of gender balance and diversity and inclusion programs, including opportunities for Maori. We're also looking at a range of collaboration opportunities that could feasibly create efficiencies across the group. So that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to open up to questions.
Great. Okay, right, we'll move through to questions. I had one first and then, can you make another?
Yep.
Yeah. It was about, well, I've got a number of questions, but the first one is just around the non-financial performance targets in 5.7 to 5.9, like you mentioned, and there's emissions in some of the draft SOIs, and I was just wondering sort of why it's come to us in this way. Like, you've got advice on the improvements that need to be done, but I was just wondering sort of why we didn't just get the full SOI in the first place. Was it a matter of time?
I'm not sure
I don't
understand
understand
this
the
question.
question either.
Have you seen the part in 5.7 to 5.9 in the agenda?
No.
Linda?
See,
This is Linda's paper. This is our paper, staff paper.
I'm not really sure.
So it's just about
These motions have been addressed, they're just asking about why they seem to be addressed by the vote.
So when as you'll be aware, the process was we received draft SOIs from the various subsidiaries. We then went through a process of reviewing those and reflecting them against our own criteria and the impact, the integrated framework that we use in terms of the capitals, that identified that there were some areas where we were not satisfied with the responses that we received from the subsidiaries, and we discussed those with you in a bit more detail the last time we were here. We then asked the subsidiaries to respond to that, and that's part of the process that we're going through in terms of presenting to you the final SOI at the end of June.
So this is just draft.
Okay, all right, cool. Thanks for that. Right, Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to be clear around the Terrace Airport. Has CCHL ever considered or approved the airport's investment into the Terrace Airport?
Not at this point.
So there's never
There is
been-
not a proposal at this point.
Sorry, the decision to acquire the land and do all the work on the project, that's never been part of a CCHL consideration.
So if you're asking if CCHL was aware of the decision to purchase land, the answer is yes. But as I've said earlier, there is no business case or proposal at this point in relation to an airport.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to understand the decision making, because I think the community really struggle to understand how we, as the majority shareholder, can have got so far down a project that they've got concerns about without us ever having made any formal decision around that. Given the quantum of funding that's been expended by the airport to date on the Terrace Airport, is that something that should go up through a decision-making process like the one you've told us about, the Gateway decision, around being approved through a statement of intent, a letter of expectation, or at a CCHL board level or at a council level? And if not, why not to date have we not had a formal decision on it?
There's a lot in the question. Let's unpack it. So firstly, in respect of the initial purchase of land, which was circa $45 million, in the context of a portfolio that's got $5.5 billion of assets, that's not material, and we wouldn't be expecting every subsidiary to come to us with every transaction of that nature. So we have subsidiary boards in place for a purpose, and our role in monitoring the performance of those is to provide very clear direction and very clear expectations. So that deals with the first piece. The second piece, which is they're a long way down this project, or this project has gone a long way. It hasn't started. As we said, there is an option to consider, and they are doing the work to determine whether that is an option that is worth exercising or not. That's the work that's underway at the moment. I mean, we have to stress there is no predetermined outcome. Whether an airport gets built there or not is a function of decisions that a lot of other people will make other than us, and that includes consumers, it includes regulators, includes businesses, includes the community.
So that's why I just wanted to check when you mentioned reference to the future Gateway decision.
Yeah.
I think you said that the information will be shared with CCHL and CCC.
Yes.
But is that Gateway decision, again, just simply a matter for the CIAL board, and we don't get a decision making around it, or do we? Or does CCHL? That's what I'm trying to understand.
This is part of our offer to bring them to you, to let them explain what that process will be. It is absolutely right that you require assurance over what that process looks like, in the same way that we want that same assurance. What we are acknowledging today, which may not have been acknowledged explicitly in the past, is that CCHL itself acknowledges that there is legitimate public interest in this project, and that is not going to go away. And it should be accommodated in the way that the airport communicates, the way that it engages, and it will be obviously part of any form.
Just to be clear, like if the port, for example, wanted to go and set up a new port in somewhere, I don't know, Pleasant Point or wherever, you know, I guess as the council owner, shareholder, I would sort of expect the shareholder would make that decision, like that would, you know, but like, so is that kind of, is there a gap in our letter of expectation or
perhaps
statement of
the thing
intention?
a point to note here is that Christchurch Airport is following a different process to what we might all have been used to in the past. So, you know, a more traditional approach to decision making is to say the outcome that we want is X. In this case, you know, either, to use your example, we want a new port or we want to have an airport. That is not the process that Christchurch Airport is going through. They are starting now with a long process of engagement, which will lead to certain decision points, and then a business case that will be developed right at the back end of that to say, actually, what are all of the options and what is the best option? So that is a different process to the one that we might all have been used to.
Thank you. I understand it's a
Stop you
different
there, Yanni.
process.
You've got a new question.
Well, I just
Have
think
you got a new question?
yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
So just in regards to, and it's great that you mentioned that CCHL will ensure subsidies report annually on the gender pay gap and the highest and lowest remuneration in each company. But I guess I'm increasingly concerned that we don't get visibility of things like CEO remuneration until the annual reports come out, which is often quite a lag between when new chief executives get appointed. So I'm just wondering, is there a way that you could provide some sort of dashboard that showed what was happening with the lowest and the highest remuneration within the companies over you know, on a regular basis, rather than us just looking at the bands and waiting for the annual report? Also, I wonder if you are able to just give us any general sense of what's happening in that regard at the moment.
I guess I'd say to that, Yanni, remuneration is almost always set on an annual basis. So whatever point in time we report to you on it, it is still simply set for a year. So, you know, I'm not sure that, you know, there may be instances in which people are employed at a particular point in the year and that therefore there is some lag. But the reality is it is an annual process, and we do report it to you on an annual basis, and I'm not sure that you would get any additional information from us reporting to you on that issue more frequently.
Just a final question from me was around Eco Central. It's great that they've got a photo of the glass bottles being recycled. For those of us who have been out and looked at some of the opportunities around glass recycling, are we able to give some feedback? And sorry, I haven't put this through an amendment, but I don't know what my colleagues think, but I just thought it might be quite good to, I guess, provide some feedback around encouraging them to continue to look at the separated glass collection, or getting the most sustainable way of processing glass at curbside, because I'm mindful that they're doing a trial. I don't know where that's got to, but it does seem that there's some opportunities as a city that we should be considering, and obviously they would have expertise in that field. Thanks.
I think that's progressing on its own, as we already understand. So I think we don't need to do anything on that right now. But thanks for bringing that up, Yanni. So now we've got Tyler.
Kia ora.
Sure.
Apologies, I know you're in the hot seat and I've got a couple of hot questions for you. It's around, obviously, tariffs. And I just wanted to sort of, you may not be able to answer this, but define what low carbon aviation is. It's sort of...
I think that's intended to refer to sustainable aviation fuels, and it relates to using sources of fuel for aviation that are non-fossil fuel.
Okay, so it's not around the frequency of those providers that go around our country.
It's a new type of fuel which requires new innovation, new technology, new aircraft, and it's low emission.
Okay. And I am hesitant about process. And I'm wondering what advancements could potentially be done through CIAL progressing through that Terrace Airport proposal between now and October when we give that letter of expectation. Do you think there will be much progress going between now and then?
They're continuing to work through a process, but there will be no decision points during that period.
And for public knowledge, can you please talk to us about the SOI and the LOE and the differences between those two?
Is that better for staff?
That's staff.
Oh,
We'll
sorry,
answer that.
sorry, Leah, apologies.
Do you want to take it or? So the level of expectation, let's start with that because that's actually usually the start of the process.
Yep.
So that is the council is the ultimate shareholder and CCHL likewise. So we will do a letter of expectation to CCHL and that will set their strategic direction that we want CCHL to consider in line with the council's strategic options. We have agreed in December last at that resolution that would be done every 3 years in line with our LTP, so there will be another one this year. In regards to the draft statement of intent, so in by the end of before the 1st of March, a draft statement of intent is received by us from CCHL, and likewise they get it from their shareholders, and that is the company's way of actually showing what their intentions are for the next 3 years. Now that isn't an annual process, but it is for a 3-year period. This process that we're under now is that we get those draft statement of intents, and we can, as a shareholder, we can give feedback to both CCHL for them to also pass on to their companies if we think that we still want them to consider or make comments on their statement of intent. When that is compared on the 30th of June, by the 30th of June, the final statement of intent will need to be is adopted by the by the entities. It's their document. It belongs to the companies, and we will receive them. And at that stage, that we will just receive them. We don't approve them, but we receive them. But if we do want to make comment from a council point of view on them, then we have the Local Government Act that we can actually, if for instance they came back and they were totally in dispute to what we as a council believed, then we can actually make formal comment back to the subsidiary through CCHL.
Okay, so around the decision-making processes, let's talk about, say for example, a big capitalising on Yanni here, a big capital venture was underway and council agreed with it, but council agreed with stopping a capital project, but CCHL really liked it. Who makes the decision at the end of the day? And how much power do LOEs really have around ensuring that those happen or do not happen?
So there's two parts to that. One is whether it's a major transaction under the Companies Act, in which case, so any major transaction, depending on equity and assets, would need to go to the shareholder. And the agreement and we have with CCHL, if before they would agree to any, so this is any entity, anything that's under a major transaction, they need to consult with council on that. So that's in regards to, so like, say the airport did happen, they would need to go through that process.
So how is a major transaction defined?
75% or 75%.
50% of total assets of the subsidiary prior to the transaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
But going back to my comment before, so when the final statement of intents come through, council has the right under the Local Government Act, if they believe it's in breach of their, what's the wording, Helen? Have you got it there?
It's a modification of the statement of intent by resolution of the shareholders is technically.
Yeah. But that would be, once you've received the final, if there was something that is in total, conflict to what the council believes, they actually can under the local feedback instruction on that. Okay.
And I just wanted to note something around that process. When I first got elected, obviously you're just getting your feet wet, and there was a lot of high-level decisions that were being made at the start of our process of being inducted as an elected member. For me, I was comfortable with it, but I was also, looking back on it in hindsight, I would have liked to have a bit more time getting my feet wet to understand these high-level strategic outcomes that we're actually talking about right now. Just wanting to note that with council, I'm not sure if we're bound by policy or if you're able to push that out for the next term. Just a little bit more around our statements of intent, our letter of expectation, etc. If you sort of get what I mean, Leah?
We are, yeah, and we'll note that. The one thing that we would say that we are under legislation in regards to the timing. Okay, so these ones were pushed a month, and we're allowed to give 1 month delay, but otherwise we have to stick to the legislation and the timing regards.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank
I would just say in response to your point, you know, CCHL recognises the role that we have for you as our shareholder. You know, I can't envisage a situation where we are proposing to do something that you are very clearly against. And part of our intention through this process is to enable you to really engage in it and understand. Inevitably, there are trade-offs involved, and it's for you to kind of understand those trade-offs and to balance them. But we're not looking to, as I think I've been clear today, we are not looking to push something through here. We are here to explain the process to you and to make sure you understand how that works. And also, I think particularly as it relates to the airport in Central Otago, to make super clear that at this point there is not a decision point that's been taken. So I just want to reassure you on that.
There is a point where we can provide feedback before
Absolutely.
they even put the stake in the ground, for example.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
It's 1 o'clock.
Okay, appreciate it.
Can I just add, from a management point of view as well, we don't
Do you want to do the
look at
questions now?
materiality through the Companies Act threshold. So we don't sit there and just go, well, in the case of the airport, that means unless something of $1 billion or more is going to happen, we pay no interest. The materiality threshold is much lower than that. And as Abby said, you know, your strategic objectives and how they are communicated to us through the letter of expectation and through forums such as this will inform how we think about materiality and then how we engage with the subsidiaries and communicate those objectives to them.
I'm just noting it's 1 o'clock. Are you happy to keep going? I think at least answer questions now. Yep. Okay, Tim.
Thank you. On a positive note, thank you very much for the work that you've all done with regards to the new board and setting that up. It's been really, really good. So thank you. And with regards to Pleasant Point, I'd be amazed if anyone built a port there. It has steam trains and probably the best taxidermist shop I've ever seen in my life, if you're into that kind of thing. With regards to the terrace, which is the issue that's kind of floating around, I would prefer us as councillors to have a workshop with staff because I think personally I have a different strategic vision about Canterbury, and I'd need to know that information and get some feedback before we get information from CIL, because it would only be fair for them to know the information that we are requiring and those concerns that we have, etc. But we do need to work on fact and rather than a whole lot of stuff floating around. So that's what I would prefer to do, because this is going to bounce around a whole lot and cause a whole lot of issues, and we need actually to work at the start and the front and the fact rather than looking at the end, which we may not even get to.
Yeah, I think
so that's what I would like from the chair. Thank you.
I think it's a multi-step process, and the public obviously needs to be kept informed as well.
Absolutely.
So we've got Celeste. Celeste?
This is about the living wage. I'm aware that you mentioned that the wage increases are sort of looked at annually. Is that correct? Are we able to look at wage increases outside the collective agreement process?
Each of the subsidiaries will have a process that they follow in relation to wage increases that are consistent with the policies that they have internally.
So is there an expectation that in regards to the living wage, that would be something that we could do as of the 1st of September across those subs? Would we be giving direction?
Well, each of the subsidiaries has signed up to the living wage, and each of them needs to work through a process of how they will implement that. And as I think we've talked to you about before, you know, it's clear that they have made that commitment, and we will be monitoring how they implement that commitment over the course of the coming SOI period.
So I'm aware that with the September increase, there is a chance that, you know, there might be some delays in delivering that because it might be pushed out as part of the collective agreement process. So because we've signalled an intention that we'll keep in line with the living wage, would it therefore be appropriate to have some deadline in mind, separate to the collective agreement process, rather than leaving it up to the individual subs to determine that?
I'm really reluctant to get involved in giving you positions on collective agreements, given that there are a whole number of collective agreements and each subsidiary will have a different one and each will have a different time frame. So I just don't, that's a level of operating detail that the subsidiaries manage and that I don't want to provide a view on at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really important that we respect the fact that those collective collective agreement processes should be allowed to run their course. We should not be intervening in those.
Yeah, great.
Sorry, yep. So just to confirm, outside of that process, so we could potentially ask them to increase it in line with the living wage.
We have a
separate to that.
commitment, and all the subsidiaries have a commitment
Great.
to implementing a living wage. The challenge for us this year is not implementing a living wage, it's understanding the consequences of a increase that the subs could not reasonably budget for. No one was anticipating a circa 10% increase. And while that has direct benefits to those that receive the living wage, it also creates other issues which we need to get clear on in respect of other relativities and impact on financial performance. So that's the work that we're doing.
And moving on to Terrace Airport, just in regards to kind of getting sort of a forward view on the process, do we have any indications of when we might get a sort of better understanding of what the business case is for that? Would that be part of a future briefing in terms of, you know?
I think you've already.
It will be part of a future briefing, but we do not have a time frame for that.
And are we looking at having a public briefing?
I couldn't answer that at this point because there's a number of steps that would need to be passed before we even reach that point.
I mean, a detailed business case is a long way away. The questions are legitimate, but the answers are a long way away.
Mark, yeah. I was trying to remember.
Yeah, thank you. Really pleased to hear your offer there of CIAL providing some detail to us of the process. Still a little bit, I guess, nervous and wanting to see if we can in some way build into statement of intent some requirement for council to be kept informed of that process, and then the idea of perhaps regular updates throughout that process to make sure that as a council we're not blindsided by anything.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the first thing, and I think we've committed to it, you know, we want assurance on the process, and you should reasonably expect the same level of assurance. So the intention of the workshop that we'll have with you when we bring the airport will be for the airport to explain that, and then for you to get our view of the same thing.
Very good. Thank you.
Andre.
Thank you. A detailed business case being a long way away, by that you mean years, right?
If you can tell me how long a resource consenting process will take, then
Yeah, more like years than
that.
months, though, for some perspective. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Just acknowledging the good work that Venues Aotearoa are doing around local suppliers, local producers, direct employment. I just wondered if CCHL is working with Venues Aotearoa to look at the success of the approach that they've done around the use of local producers, suppliers, and direct employment, and to put that into, I guess, some consideration for our companies.
From a functional point of view, no, we haven't had direct engagement with VO on that. In terms of what you're asking, which is, should social procurement be part of the things that we consider, and should we reflect that expectation to our subsidiaries? CCHL in the past has not had an impact framework. It's had investment objectives or expectations that largely touch some of those factors. So one of the priority pieces of work in our business plan this year is to create that impact framework, and that impact framework would tease out exactly those sorts of initiatives. Our purpose statement requires us to have a positive impact, and we want to really understand where we can be most impactful in a positive way, and social procurement would be one of the things that we would consider.
Yeah, thank you. I just note in the mana section, you know, like it's very good at treaty relationships and engagement, but there's very little around community impact targets, even though that's kind of one of the key headings. So the work, you will have something that says that you're undertaking that work.
I think, as we've discussed before, you know, one of the things that we have been trying to do in terms of our approach to the SOI is being clear about the focus areas and to ensure that we see meaningful performance in those focus areas. The more that we layer into the SOIs, the more we risk distraction from the key areas of focus from the subsidiaries.
Aaron.
Yeah, just a bit of a follow-on from Andre's question around the timing of Terrace. I think there's an expectation from the public and probably this table that we would be shown a model that stacks up environmentally, socially, economically before you'd apply for your resource consent. So we can go to the public and say the reason why we would support this is because it stacks up environmentally, or no, we're putting the brakes on now because it doesn't. And that would all be shown. Is that not how it's going to work?
I think that it's reasonable to expect that the airport during the remainder of 2023 would be present explaining the strategic case.
And that, because that must be stacking up or not stacking up all the time, right? So they're constantly working on it.
They're constantly working on the strategic case, right? But that's not the same thing as then thinking about what options exist in respect of what kind of airport you would build to what intended outcomes. That is more detailed, more subsequent phases of work. But you are right that it's reasonable to expect that we would get a clear articulation of the strategic case at some point this year.
Yeah, because until we can share that with the public, we can't, the public's flying blind, excuse the pun, as to the outcomes, benefits or not from that. And of course, we got shown earlier on why they originally went into Terrace, and so that stuff stacked up. But they've done a whole lot more work since then, so it either stacks up more or it doesn't. And it would be good for us to receive that and then for it to be public information.
Yep, that's all part of the assurance process, yep.
Great. So timeline on that?
I can't commit the airport to a timeline, but I would
They're normally
just say
pretty good with timelines at the airport.
reasonably expect, and when we bring them to you, they'll lay out that process.
With the process that's outlined in the SOI for the airport sort of process, it's got those bullet points towards the end about Terrace. And it is explained in there differently to sort of the way that you've just explained it to us now. And I'd kind of like what you told us to be reflected in the document, because that doesn't really show particularly where community consultation will happen. It talks about engagement early on, which is sort of the process that's been happening up till now. It talks about resource consents, but it doesn't really talk at all about where council will have input in the proper community consultation, obviously, that would go with the resource consent. But, so do you understand what I mean? Like, I think we need more clarity in the SOI, in my opinion. Could that happen?
We can certainly reflect on that, and to the extent that it doesn't provide you with the assurance that we've just described that we want to see, then we can absolutely address that.
Okay. And a different topic that another councillor reminded me about was for each of the subsidiaries making the AGMs public. Has that been discussed?
Yes, it has, and that's part of the SOIs.
It is. I didn't see it in there, but thank you. That's good. So we've got a number of additional resolutions that councillors have brought forward. Now, we just need to clarify who's moving and seconding different ones. We either could do this now and go on to debate now, or we could do that after lunch, because I'm not sure how long this process is going to take.
We'll do this first, this bit first. Let's get this.
Except, well, here's Jake.
Oh, where did Jake go?
Jake's not here. I think it might be better to come back after lunch, might it?
If Jake's
But then you've got the externals having to come back, that's all.
if Jake's not here, can he put an amendment in?
Yeah, is he, do
But
we know where he's
you
gone?
can't, surely.
No. Is he, does it, what is text? Well, is there anyone else? So should we go through individually and let's see if we've got a mover and seconder for each of them?
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just check? Do we know where Jake and Pauline have gone and what time they're back?
Pauline's got a meeting, I think.
The green ones. So all the rest have been in. So can we start with E? We got a mover and a seconder for this?
That's Yanni,
That's
is the
Yanni.
mover.
Sorry, I'm just trying to... Yeah, so I was happy to move that the response to senior executive remuneration restraint does not go far enough and that clear targets need to be set to reduce the level of senior executive remuneration, and Celeste has seconded it.
Right, you're going to vote on this? Okay. Do you want to ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Aren't board remuneration, etc., it does set by, or that, you know, there's a framework that is worked from. It's not just taken out of the air. The same with a CE's remuneration or anything like that. There's a framework in New Zealand with levels, etc., whether it's public service or private. Is that correct?
So certainly as far as board remuneration is concerned, that's effectively set by this council. We bring you a report in terms of fees. In terms of senior executives, often entities will use benchmarking to establish what are market rates. The reality is that all of our subsidiaries compete in an open marketplace for talent. That is increasingly difficult to maintain both in Christchurch and in New Zealand. There is that data. I would expect all of the subsidiaries to use data in informing those decisions.
Aaron?
Yeah, so with the intention of this, if you were to show more restraint, would that have any negative consequences?
I would expect so, yes.
Okay, cool, that's pretty clear.
Andre?
Just to clarify, your intention's to narrow the gap, but this reads as lowering remuneration.
About benchmarking.
Yeah, there's a number of issues if people want to get into the detail now, but if you look at what happens in New Zealand, in fact, around the world, there's generally a company called Strategic Pay that it's just a circular spiral upwards around senior executive remuneration. Never seems to go
Can you just
down.
answer the question really directly,
So,
because it's almost sounds like debate.
Yeah, but the intent's narrowing the gap, so why isn't narrowing that gap sort of here in the wording, if you know what I mean?
Because I still think there's a problem at the top. Like, some of the salaries that our CEOs are paid are
Yanni's happy
astronomical.
Yanni's happy with that, so we'll just leave it there and you can
thank
make
you.
your own decision around that. So we've got a mover and seconder for that. Are we moving? We'll go through each one for a mover and seconder, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
So G, express concern at the strategic direction of Christchurch International Airport Limited's proposal to continue to progress an airport at Terrace due to the cost and climate change impacts. So that's Yanni's as well. Is that you moving that one?
Yes, please.
Yep. And who's the seconder for that? Celeste. Okay. Any questions on that?
And I was also happy to note the feedback from Sustainable Terrace as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Aaron?
So why would we be expressing concern until we don't know, when we don't know the details? Because
I think this is for debate.
Okay, let's leave it there and we'll wait for debate for the answer to that too. But,
okay, yeah, don't let the facts get in the way.
Yep. Otherwise, we get Yanni about 10 opportunities at debate. Noting feedback from Sustainable Terrace Incorporated has been forwarded on to Christchurch City Holdings Limited for consideration, which I asked for that to happen. So we've got, Yanni and Tyler as a seconder. Confirms Council's expectation for living wage to be paid by Old Christchurch City Holdings Limited's companies to all employees and suppliers. Whose was that one? That's Celeste moving. Who's seconding that one? And Jake was seconding.
I don't.
Can he do that if he's not
he can't
here?
do that if he's here, can he, Helen? Jake's not here. Can he be a seconder? No. So you are.
Okay.
You go.
We've got Tyrone for seconding. And the last one, yes.
I'm confirming, it's just reiterating that they are.
Yep.
And then J, request council be briefed on the current position, Christchurch International Airport Limited intentions and plan progression from now, and that council be kept informed throughout the process as it progresses. So that's Yanni.
Was happy to second.
Mark second.
Can I please ask a question in respect of that wording? Is that meant to be in respect, are the airport's intentions in respect of Terrace only? Does that need to be included in there rather than we're asking them to come and tell us on everything? So I think it would be preferable
Yanni?
to include that.
Are you happy for us to add in regards to Terrace?
Right, so that was Yanni and Mark.
Yanni and Mark, yep. And we need a mover and seconder for all of the blues at the top.
Yep. Does anyone want to move the original resolutions from the report? Tim, and seconder for Victoria?
That's just to D. To 2D.
Would that be the process? So, yep, okay.
That's what everyone's happy with.
Now, who would like to debate? Okay, so I think, I just think we should come back after lunch for that. I do not want to sit here.
That's up to, how many people want to debate? Do we want to stop for lunch now and come
I
back?
think we should.
Yeah?
Otherwise we'll be here till after 2.
So is everyone happy to have a lunch? Okay, so we're back at, no? So, yep. Okay. Okay.
All right, right. Who wants to debate first? And debating everything all together. So, who's first? Who? Sorry,
Well,
stop talking.
that's-
Who's first?
Tim.
Who, put your hand up if you would like to. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but are you debating the amendments at the same time or just the original
The whole lot.
staff recommendation?
So, Tim, did you want to debate first?
Thank you. I just want to thank Abby and the team at CCHL, as I did before, with the work that you've done moving forward from the Northington's report, reshaping the directors, etc. So thank you very much for that. There's one big issue around here is tariffs, and I just reiterate that I think the process for us to go forward is we get together, we discuss what we need, what our concerns are, based on the truths, and then we go out from there to CCHL and the CIAL. I think that is essential, or this is just going to be bouncing around and wasting a lot of people's time and raising concerns where we can actually alleviate them. So thank you.
No one else wants to debate? Mark?
Yeah, I'm really keen to see that final clause of the resolution there with the keeping the council up to date on tariffs. I think that's vital for us to try and stay abreast of what's going on there. I'm not so certain whether I can support the senior executive remuneration piece. I mean, that sounds quite dangerous to me. It has some pretty interesting implications for CCHL, as well as potentially the living wage. I mean, whilst I kind of agree with living wage, it goes a long way there in stating that it extends to suppliers as well. That could have some interesting unintended consequences that we might need to be a bit careful about. So, yeah, basically I'm happy and thank you for coming to us today, and particularly with the offer for the briefing from CIAL on tariffs. That's, I think, long overdue, and look forward to progressing this forward.
Thanks, Mark. Tyler?
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. I just wanted to note my hesitancy around the SI in itself, and everyone knows about my thoughts around the CIL tariffs report. It's something that I'm very, very sceptical of around the process, and I would really like to see a structured, managed, strategic plan coming from CIL. So I'm really looking forward to them coming, and I really appreciate CCHL for actually bringing them to us. There's going to be a lot of questions in that space too. Outside of that, there are a lot of these resolutions that I'm in support of, and I am also quite sympathetic to the senior leadership one, because we've been briefed in it quite a lot around the implications and the barriers that we've put forward in regards to making sure that there's more equitable outcomes. I'm not sure if this resolution itself would address bridging that gap, but outside of that, the other resolutions look great. Happy to support. Really appreciate CCHL. Abby, Paul, thanks for coming in. Cheers.
Tyrone?
So I just want to say, like, the quality of information that we're getting is is incredible. So I really think that we have to acknowledge that, like, the transparency, like, it's really, like, at a very high level. So the decisions we make are being done with the best information that is available at the time, and it's being given to us in a really frank and honest way. So I really want to acknowledge that. So just can you just lower the things? I can't quite see one of the resolutions. Number E actually is not E, D. So I'm happy to support almost all of these resolutions. I'm D. I mean, I don't think the wording goes far enough, but like that's just wordsmithery. But like I just really want to point out that diversity on council organisation boards, it's not just a key focus, it's our absolute kaupapa, and we really need to need to think really strongly about that now and in future years. I echo my colleague Mark Peters in not backing. Yeah, I can't back Resolution E, but at the same token, I absolutely back the. God, so many. Forgotten my alphabet. Whatever it is, regarding living wage anyway. But yeah, and the final resolution, I mean, you're getting it pretty loud and clear. We've got some really serious reservations. I know that a whole lot of this is being addressed, but I think we're just underlining that. So take it in the spirit that it's offered, and I would say, and no more than that. Kia ora.
Celeste. I just want to thank you for coming in today and answering all our questions. Just speaking to the living wage one for a start, I just think it's important to remember that the living wage is about a wage that provides people with, basic quality of life. So it's not it shouldn't be an aspirational target. It should be the bare minimum that we're offering. So that's why that's been put forward as just reiterating our commitment, and it's great to see that there is already a strong sort of intention there. So it's just clarifying that we can deliver that as quickly as possible and there's no delays. Just echoing what my colleagues have said around tariffs. Obviously around the table there's some concerns, and I appreciate that some of you have just come on board, so you've sort of been thrown in the deep end in terms of having to kind of step up and answer a lot of questions for things that have come before your time. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I just think it's important that we have these conversations in a public forum, because part of building trust and confidence is that there's transparent and clear information. So I just want to thank you for your time and look forward to further updates on that project.
Yanni.
Thank you. I do want to acknowledge the new approach that CCHL are taking to briefing us, to keeping us aware of what's happening with our companies, and to doing a lot more strategic thinking about the future. But just to speak in support of the amendments that I've put forward, and also the living wage, I think what's disheartening is that despite having a request for senior executive remuneration restraint for a number of years now through this process, what we continue to see is that those salaries seem to be going up and up and up, and yet we're still struggling to pay the living wage. Now, appreciate that 10% may not have been something that people could anticipate, but the reality is, as has been said, if we can't afford to pay the people at the bottom enough to live on, but we can somehow magically appear to pay the people at the top more and more than what any one person probably needs in terms of meeting the basic necessities of life, then I think that's inherently unfair. So, there's requirements there's reference in the draft statement of intent to look at ensuring subsidiaries report annually on the gender pay gap and the highest and lowest remuneration in each company. That's great, but it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't address the imbalance that's been created by the ever-increasing salaries at the top, while acknowledging the constant struggle to pay those at the bottom what's fair and what's needed. So the wording in here is good, but the action needs to match the expectation that we've expressed. It has been very difficult to get the transparent information about what is happening with our senior executive remuneration across our companies. When new CEOs are appointed, for example, despite previous advice that we would be told and it would be made public, we're told to wait for the annual report where it is public, which I don't think is fair enough. I just want to talk to tariffs. I don't think there can be any justification in a climate emergency and with a sustainability and ecological crisis that tariffs should be proceeding. It is pie in the sky, and some of my colleagues have said, how do you know about the cost? Well, I just did initially, when we got the proposal first heard of, a rough estimate of 500,000 tonnes of carbon per annum that would be flying to tariffs. So for the offset cost estimate would be about $25 million a year, which would not have to be accounted for by CIAL or CCHL, but is still the price of the emissions that would be generated. So I don't believe an airport, a council, and a holdings company can simply pass the buck and claim any degree of sustainability success when such an environmental impact is proposed to be built on our planet. We've already heard in the media that runway plans will be announced sometime this week or early next week. So the airport is progressing, and I think we should have every right to hear what the community have said and express concern.
Aaron?
Yeah, I note Jamie's hands up as well.
Yep.
Oh, you did see it, cool. This is an interesting process because there's more amendments than there is in the substantive, which is a very odd way to run your board here. And to see them pop up on the day without discussion, without answers to most of the things there, and the impacts is interesting to say the least. The proposal around tariffs, for those of you that are obviously unaware, when you spot a gap as a commercial operator, you don't go, oh crikey, a shopping mall in Riccarton will go really, really well. Let's tell everyone all about it, and then we'll start trying to acquire the land. That's generally not how commercial situations work. And so they had gone out and made a plan. They clearly explained it to the council. They're then doing all the work that is going to come back to us and be shown before they take further steps. So the point to put the brakes on tariffs will be once we have the information. That would be the time to do it, because I, for one, if it does not stack up environmentally, will not be supporting it. I've said that right from the start. But until I'm shown that evidence, I would be a fool to be drawing a line in the sand and saying, oh, no, we're just not going to do that. We'll let people fly a few more kilometres and go the long way and then drive for 6 hours to get to their destination, because they're still going to go there. New Zealand's still going to export goods via air. New Zealand's still going to import medicines via air. The air industry is not going anywhere. The smart money is to be changing the fuel and to be reducing the amount of emissions that the air industry creates. And so if this does that, then I will support it. If it does not, I will not support it. It seems pretty simple, but you can throw your political flag in the air and make everyone clap for you because you're willing to get rid of it now, but it might actually stack up. So let's do it when it stacks up. There will be consequences to cutting CEO salaries by 20%. High-performing people the world over don't do it as volunteers. Well, our ones on CCHL do, but they don't do it as volunteers. High-performing people get high-performing pay, and there's a reason why the best tickets to weekends with Adele are $36,000 US. It's a phenomenal amount of money. She loves music, but she gets really well paid for it because she's the best in the world. And the quantum of moving a CEO or someone at the top, and I don't always agree with the big high-end salaries, that's fair, that's a position I come from, but the quantum of that versus moving 10% across the entire bottom is a big, big difference and has an impact. And the impact that I fear it will have is it will be job layoffs, because you won't be able to employ as many of those people. So we should heed the warning, look at the consequences of those actions before we go leaping into it more and more. And there will be consequences on the contractors. So I will not support any of the amendments because all of it's in the substantive, and the substantive should have been increased during the week when we go through these processes like an organised council.
Thanks, Aaron.
No clapping.
James.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the staff recommendations. I think it's A through to E. I'm fine actually with the noting amendments. A through D is the staff recommendations. I apologise. So comfortable with those, and I'll support those. I'm fine with the noting amendments that are in there. I'm not so comfortable with the amendments E, which is on the REM, F, which is the concern at Terrace, and H, which was the living wage within the subs. Look, in my view, CCHL knows our collective political view as a council. This is passed on to the subsidiaries, but it's really up to them to do their jobs. So, look, my fear with some of these amendments here, E, F, and H, is that it's really the council straying outside of its wheelhouse. We have a holdings company and CCTOs with their own management and governance structures to competently manage our investments in these entities at arm's length from the council. So it's a really intentional structure that exists to buffer the political from the commercial. It's totally appropriate for political decisions to be made at council. That's the point, it's the nature of it. But we've set up and endorsed a structure that we've got for a reason. Exactly these amendments here go against that, go against everything that we've intentionally set it up for. So I think it's really dangerous territory, and my preference is to let CCHL and the subs do their job. So I won't be supporting E, F and H. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Kelly.
Thank you, Mel. Yeah, thank you to Abby and the team for the quality of information that they've brought to us. A lot of this has been said before. You know, I'm impressed with the transparency and open-minded attitude around tariffs. Like Councillor Kewen, I think it's too early and not intelligent to put a line in the sand now. Technologies change. Let's see where this goes. In terms of salaries, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. We know that. And I think we always need to be mindful of those at the bottom of the heap, so to speak, in terms of salaries. I feel like we already do that. I feel like there's a bit of virtue signaling going on here. I'm happy with the substantive and won't be agreeing with most of the others, so thank you.
Fab.
I too am what they all said. I too am happy with the substantive, and I do feel sorry for you, Mel, having all this stuff thrust on you. I know what it's like sitting there when you get all this stuff thrown at you, and I won't be supporting any of the amendments because CCHL is doing everything anyway. It's all a train in progress. So I think we're wasting our time putting this stuff up here, and why CCHL. So they come along here and they've done a fantastic presentation. I wouldn't be rushing back if this is the way we behave ourselves. So thank you very much.
I'll debate now. Not well written because it can't write and chair at the same time. But I just wanted to thank you for coming on. I didn't really do that properly when you first came, so thank you, and for front-footing about the sustainable terrace question that they had. So thank you for that. There is a flying pig in the room. Look, I'm actually happy with some aspects of this. The things that keep me quite excited about the plans for our companies are things like plans that Orion has to extend the electricity network and to make it more redundant. And they are looking at, providing electricity to three times as much at least of what they're doing currently. And I think that's super exciting. I like what the airport is doing with Kowhai Park and producing electricity, solar electricity. I think that's fantastic. I do have a bit of a problem with tariffs. I think if you look at what they've put into the statement of intent, the entire premise here is based on increasing amounts of air travel. Basically, it says we're already at pre-pandemic levels, and the whole basis is obviously to increase that. Yes, we do need to see the business case. Absolutely, I think it's very clever the way that this has been gone about, purchasing the land. It actually gives us opportunity, but how that progresses and whether we have enough input and the community feels like they have a real say in it is yet to be seen, I guess. So I personally am not happy with the wording that I can see here about the bullet points of their intentions over the next few years. But I am looking forward to having the airport come to talk to us about the process, and I do think as much of that should be public as possible because it's the public that care about this. We are public too, but it's for people both in Terrace and for the people of Christchurch because we're all shareholders as well as the government and other shareholders, so we've got to keep that in mind as well, that we're not the only shareholders. So I'll leave it at that. So now we'll, did you want to debate, Andre? I saw your finger move.
Thank you. Yeah, I will. I should and I will. Just the wording doesn't quite make sense to me, so I can't support E. Hence my questions. F, in terms of expressing concern, I don't think it necessarily makes a huge amount of sense to be expressing concern about a strategic direction we haven't necessarily seen or been briefed on. However, I don't agree it's drawing a line in the sand as such. I mean, a lot of this meeting here today has been expressing concern. Like the concern has already been expressed. I don't see a huge amount of harm in this resolution either. The concern does exist. I don't really see too many issues with expressing it. But we will see more of that strategic direction in the near future anyway. Living wage, definitely support the point around losing good people. applies at the top, it also applies at the bottom, and it's a competitive wage market. So, yeah, the same principle applies in both E and H in that regard. So, happy to support F through I actually.
We'll vote on them
basis,
separately anyway, I think.
Yep.
So,
Yep, thank you.
Victoria, did you want to say anything?
No, I think it's all been well covered off. Thank you. Nothing to add.
Yeah, you good? Yep. All right, so we'll go on to making the decisions now. So we'll do. Does everyone happy to vote for resolutions 1 and 2, A through D together?
Sorry, are you going to do the amendments first, so we know what's in and what's out?
Oh, no,
Well, they're not amendments. They're just we can.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll do E first. So we've got the mover of Yanni, second Celeste. So all those in favour say aye.
E.
E. Would we like a division on this, or do we?
Yes, I think we should.
Yep. So division. We'll be done by 2.
Do this slowly because this is in random order, so it's not the same as order that it appears on the screen. So poor Jess here is going to have to take it and do it there. So noting that Councillor Templeton is standing back from this item, as is Councillor McDonald, and that Councillor McClellan and Councillor or Deputy Mayor Cotter are not here, I will do the remaining names. So Councillor Johansson.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Donovan.
Yes.
Councillor Coker.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
No.
The Mayor.
No.
Yep. Councillor Scandrett.
No.
Councillor Barber.
No.
Councillor Kean. No. Councillor Goff.
No.
Councillor Hinstock.
No.
Councillor Fields.
No.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
No.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 yeses, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 noes.
Right. So that's not carried. Okay. So we're on to F. I'll just let you move that down so I can read it. So F, expressed concern at the strategic direction of the airport to continue to progress an airport at Terrace due to costs and climate change impacts. Moviani, seconded Celeste. I think we should probably do a division again.
Okay, randomly generated again, and the first up is Councillor Kean.
No.
Councillor Hinstock.
No.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett.
No.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Yes.
Councillor Coker.
Yes.
Councillor Fields.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
The Mayor. Councillor Barber.
Nope.
Councillor Johansson. Yes. Councillor Donovan. Yes. Councillor Goff.
No.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against.
So that's carried. Okay. G. Note that feedback from Sustainable Terrace Incorporated has been forwarded on to CCHL for consideration. So I think we probably can do that all together. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Great, that's carried. H, confirm council's expectation for living wage to be paid by all CCHL companies to all employees and suppliers. I think we can do that all together. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? So that's Aaron against, and Mark, and Phil, and Victoria,
And May.
and James. So that was 5. Just
James, Victoria.
Yeah, you're basically doing a division. Do you want a division?
in Mark.
Okay, division's good.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against.
Yeah.
5 against you. Yep, so that's passed. Okay, and then I request council be briefed on the current position in regards to Terrace Airport, the airport's intentions and planned progression from now, and council be kept informed throughout the process. Put that all together, or does anyone want a division?
I think we just do it. I think.
Yep. Okay, so all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
No.
Phil? Anyone else? Are you for, James?
Yeah, I think some people need some education, so why not?
Okay. Okay, so that's carried. Okay.
We're done now, aren't we?
Yeah. Now we've got resolutions 1 and 2.
On the staff recommendations. That's right, sorry.
Okay. Does anyone want a division for this? All right. So I would like to vote for 1 separately to 2. But I can just note that at the time. So all those in favour of resolutions 1 to 2?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? And just noting I'm against number 1. Okay, so that's carried. Right, I have no idea when we're coming back from lunch. What would you like to do, Sam? Now that you've eaten your lunch? No way.
2 o'clock is punishment for
2:30.
all the stupid questions.
Yes. I think we come back
I
at
think it was 2:30, I think is what he was saying. Yeah.
So what time are we coming back?
2:30.